Hey, this is take 3. Welcome to EVE 2020. It is July 1st. We're only 4 days away from an end of days cataclysmic war between two sides of the entire server. So we'll talk about what's going on there with war preparations. We'll also check in on some of the patch notes that have come out and have a look at what's going on in the test center as people prepare for this Proving Grounds arena, quote unquote, PvP. So we'll see what's going on there. I am Matterall, and let's talk some EVE Online with some friends here.
I was trying to ask, what's the technical term for those prep meetings before a big boxing match, where they are both like posing like crazy?
Dancing around the ring, you mean?
Well, when they do those, isn't it like media
press conference
something? Yeah, the press conference where they just stand there and just pose like crazy people, and everything is like blingy and flashy, and all the journalists are there. And well, we had that funny licking of the mic episode in the Corona era. So I just think that's what I feel right now with the war. It's like posing, more posing, propaganda and posing.
A lot of flexing and weighing in. Yeah.
Weighing in, and most importantly, you got to have the stare down at the end. You got to have the hype.
But don't lick the mic. Please don't lick the mic.
What are you talking about with that? I didn't even know what that is.
It was that sports dude. Was it a football? I think he in a press conference, and the Corona thing had just ramped up, and he was trying to make a joke about it and licked the mic, and then he actually got it.
Jeez. Didn't know that. That's terrible, but ironic.
Have you figured it out yet, Matt?
Yeah, it just started up. So I don't know. We had technical problems earlier today where the stream didn't start. Do you know what it was, McLeod? What it technically?
Oh, let me tell you. Let me take this one, McLeod. I got this. So apparently the server that you select is very important, because some servers, I literally did everything under the sun, almost reset my entire house. You have to select a different server. So like instead of having an auto recommend to a server, you have to select a different one. Like I was streaming to the Atlanta, Georgia server. You have to pick, and I switched to New York, and that fixed it.
We live, by the way.
Oh, shit.
So good.
It's okay. It's all good.
Main phase before the war, we are seeing preparations. We're seeing evacuation of assets, fortifications, and people setting down defensive positions. We're seeing the Mercenary's contracts come out on both sides, and sooner or later, we're going to see a stare down and a showdown for this war.
Cool. Take all that energy and hold it for just a second longer when we get through patch notes here real quick. Then we'll go to test server, and then we'll hit war update, and then you can totally blast all that out. Let's go real quick to patch notes. Anything in here that we need to look at? It looks like some interface changes and then fixes that were implemented. Was there anything to look at here?
I think most of it is just fixes around the character select feature, that new feature where you don't have to close your client to select a character. In a past show where we talked about CSP had tested it, but there's some bugs that are shaking out as players are using this feature, and it looks like it's just another round of those fixes.
Right. Okay, so let's move on to Test Center. What have you guys seen with the Test Center? Because there is this new patch coming called the Proving Grounds.
So the new Proving Grounds are live on the Sissy test server, and already we're seeing players trying them out. Last night's Trash Talk Tuesday show, a couple individuals were testing it out. I've seen posts from players asking other players to come to Sissy, try it out, especially the 2v2 in the group content.
Yeah, what was that about? People looking for groups? Is it kind of a Wild West out there?
One of the things that we have now with the Proving Grounds is you have a 1v1 contest. It's back behind PvE, so you have to do the Abyssal site. I think they're at a certain time of day. you get this gate where you may opt to go into the proving grounds, and you go into a 1v1 sort of a matchmaking mode. The new feature does still have the 1v1. You get to bypass the PvE, but it also brings in other modes like 2v2 and 5-man free-for-all. And that's new type of arena content for us. And I think personally the group is going to be a little more attractive because there really isn't set 2v2 or group contests anywhere in EVE, and this is something brand new.
So this won't be like just to get things clear. This won't be going through a regular Abyssal run and then going to Proving Grounds. This will be straight into Proving Grounds, right?
Exactly. You'll have a filament, and you'll activate the filament. And from what I understand was described last night, you'll activate the filament, and then you'll sit there waiting for the matchmaking to occur. And while you're waiting there, you can be attacked. So if you're sitting there in Jita and you decide, hey, I'm going to activate this filament, and maybe you have to wait a minute to get matched, someone can fly up with a tornado and blap you. So there's ways you can get killed. Let's say you're not killed, you get a match, you get taken in. You now have this match where it could be 1v1, 2v2, etc. And then just like the Abyssal sites now, when you exit, you can also be attacked by those that are not in the.
So the interesting thing is, a lot of people who ran Proving Grounds a lot of the time, especially Torvald would be able to speak to this as well. Although he has tried a fair amount of crazy fits and stuff when it comes to running Proving Grounds in the Abyss, but a lot of the aspects of the ship type and the ship and the fittings for that particular ship that people tend to bring to Proving Grounds is partly designed for Proving Grounds, but also partly designed in order to actually get through that Abyssal one, obviously. So, the fits and the ships that will generally tend to occur or tend to appear in Proving Grounds, had to go through an Abyssal run in order to start off with, or at least to some extent. Whereas this, because you're going straight into the Proving Grounds, there may be actually a lot more variety in the type of ship that you see, and also the fittings for those ships as well.
Yeah, it actually opens up a lot because there's been a couple scenarios where I've tried things to basically counter what the top ships are, like the Ikitursa. Like I've tried a Lachesis a couple of times. That's basically meant to just make an Ikitursa's life hell, but because I could never get through the PvE portion. But it's cool that we've got the option now that we've got the limitations on T1 cruisers. The Ikitursa can't be, a god ship, and the Vedmak's not in on this, so it's a very cool. I didn't get to see much of the action the past 2 days, but I know one of the things I saw was kiting caracals, and I imagine those are going to be kind of a pain for people and kind of a go-to. But the event, once it goes live, is only going to be around for a little over a week. So I guess we'll see what happens with the new events coming out and kind of what happens. And it's cool that CCP is open to shaking it up, and they're trying all these different variations to it.
Yeah, so to be clear, this is an event. It's not a permanent change?
So they're going to have, I think right now there's 9 different events planned between now and October. So some of them are going to be a week, 10 days. Some of them are going to just be over the weekend. And the first 3 they have selected, and you can see that in the dev blog, but then the other 6 of them, they say to be announced. So they're basically going to take the feedback from these first 3 events and what the community says and, what CSM brings them. And then they're going to come out with the next events and see. You can see they're going with the MR, the Navy slicers in 2 or 3 weeks from now. So they're going to kind of how we've got these specific racial events. They're going to follow that. But yeah, we have no clue. And it's basically, that's the cool thing about this feature. They've released it and basically told us, hey, here's the feedback we've gotten. Here's what we got. Let's keep building off of it. Let's, it's basically, instead of one of those features where it's like, all right, here's the feature. We'll see you guys in 2 or 3 years to talk about it. It's one of those where they're actively listening and actively taking in our feedback to decide what the outcome is. And we don't know after these 9 events, once it ends in October, we have no clue if this is going to be a permanent feature in Eve, if it's going to continue to be an event they do over time. I mean, it's all up in the air right now.
Wow.
I think it's safe to assume that CCP will react based on the player's reaction. Similar to Needlejack. Needlejack filaments were very popular when they came out as an event. When they went away, players asked for them back, and now it's a permanent fixture. I would say it's safe to predict we might see something similar with this. If it plays out well and players enjoy it and they ask for it, we might potentially see this as something permanently added.
This is essentially
Dunk in
a
the chat.
soft open for a feature.
Dunk in the chat seems to be implying that it is going to be it is a permanent long-term thing. It's just the combo of ships and the actual format of the fights that are available will be changing over time. There's a constant, like, semi-regular event.
Well, they also obviously seem to want to tie this in, from a lore perspective into the current, invasion that seems to be happening as well. So, they're obviously taking the opportunity of the invasion to kind of place this in as a bunch of events. I mean, even if it's as a way of testing this out, and obviously if it becomes a more permanent thing, then they have the ability to be able to push this obviously as a permanent thing, because the Draconians have at least a footprint at the moment in known space.
Going to have these events in Q4. How many was in the dev block will depend on how we will participate in them.
Well, the thing that strikes me is that this is kind of their new development style, with Fozzie's team basically experimenting with events, right? Using the events to test things out and then fine-tuning it or seeing if it even works. And then it gets moved into CCP Rise's group to deploy on a more permanent basis. That seemed to be what they did with filaments, but they used an event to see how filaments worked, and then they were very popular, and so then they went to Rise's group, or they were coded by Signal, was it? And I think they cleaned up some code to make sure they could work with different circumstances, and then they were released into the wild. And I think they were even asked, like, is that a way to experiment with development? It's kind of like, it's an easy way to deploy something without the stakes behind it. So what used to happen is that they would tout this great feature that was coming. It would come out and people would shrug, or it would be completely broken or whatever. And then CCP had to spend a lot of time fixing it, making sure it worked the way it was supposed to, and then reintroduce it, like Faction War I'm thinking about. And so instead of doing that with all that pressure and all that time invested in something that may not work, you can kind of, soft launch it, see how people like it. And then if it has good reception, then you would go back and make it a more permanent fixture to the game. But it seems like the way Dunk is speaking, and he's a CSM member, so maybe he has some insight we don't, or maybe it's all in the dev blog and we haven't figured it out. This is about something it's a new platform for events. So these are basically PvP events now, equivalent to NPE events. Sorry, it's not NPE, it's NPC events or PvE events. Interesting. Okay, so let's go and, they like your apartment there, McLeod.
It's a lovely place.
Let's have a look. Want to show us around? So clean. There's no dust on the floor.
Well,
Awesome.
On this episode of Eve Cribs.
Yeah.
Oh, God.
All right. Let's move to the war update. What's going on in your neck of the woods? Let us know. And anybody in here want to start us off on what they've been seeing lately?
We've seen the movement of certain assets. Obviously, Goonswarm lost 2 Fortizards to simple farmers when they were attempting to evacuate
3,
assets
actually.
from Brave Space. They also lost the faction Fortizard to Foxholders, who came across and just looted it and ran off with it. It's currently for sale. They are selling it. I've also seen Pittsburgh lose his Titan, attempting to move it. I believe he attempted to ransom it, as he said, but that didn't work out quite well. And for a lot of the independent groups, mine included, I am making preparations for this war. Mercenary contracts have been sent on both sides, and as soon as the 5th kicks off, we'll be looking to participate and gain some wealth and content from the war.
All right. There's a number of things there he said that are interesting. I think we covered these, but we'll cover them again because they're very important. First of all, Sado was, what do you call him? Alexander the Great with a terrific fighting record.
Sedo, while staying with us in test and recently with his more independent ventures, he's been seen as a very capable fleet commander, one amongst the newer fleet commanders, and I'd say he's a bit of an Alexander the Great figure. He's got, a lot of people like him, a lot of people see him as a great FC and a content driver, and his so far very good record of victories has been tarnished by a very unfortunate loss of multiple super capitals, over 450, 460 billion worth. And the incident that involved that was because he midded his super capitals for a structure timer for a citadel.
Okay, explain that. Midded. What does that mean?
I believe he was in the process of moving it or
midpoint. He hit a midpoint.
Yes.
So that means you were just enough out of range that you had to jump twice, once to a midpoint and then to destination. And that allows people to nab you when you jump to that midpoint unexpectedly. But go on, Rich.
He himself said on stream he got complacent and he wanted to drop his super capitals onto this structure where he could have dropped dreadnoughts instead. And the question was posed: why didn't he start up with something lower priced, perhaps a large subcap fleet or just a simple dreadnought fleet? But he decided not to, and as a result, he's lost his significant amount of super capitals and, to a degree, some confidence in him.
4 Titans and 4 Nixes. Yeah, we saw that yesterday. That's a pretty big price tag. Would it come to nearly half a trillion? 500
almost
million?
Half. Yes, almost half a trillion-esque worth of
how big a blow? How big a blow is that to a group of his size, which is not enormous?
Well, his is a smaller independent group. They're driven by content, and unlike the bigger alliances, which hold significant amount of sovereignty and structures, to replace these titans, to replace every module, every ship, it would cost them significantly more effort. So it would be a lot more difficult for Sedo to replace those 4 titans and those Nixes than it would for Test, which he left from.
Right. So Sedo was an FC for Test. He went off to do his own thing with his own group. They're called Dread Bomb. And they were bombed by Snuff, right? Snuff and some friends.
He stated that he didn't expect Siege Green to also have to be with Wangs. In that he didn't expect them to be blue or something. And I believe he also mentioned that when he was jumping in, it was either somebody. He did spot somebody in that system, and he thought it was initially safe. But no, that somebody who was in a Silent Coalition turned out to be a scout, I believe. So it was a well-crafted ambush.
Miscalculation.
There is a video posted on Reddit from Wangs that gives their perspective of the Dread Bomb, first Dread Bomb.
Yeah. And this happened in Empire Space in Cinque Zone, Losec, near the border of the Bleaklands. This is Great Tessier. That's what I said. I'm sticking with it. Pretty big loss. Yeah, pretty big loss.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it comes out to 475 billion ISK loss. Oh, but the people who were attacking the ambushers, they lost 100 million as well, probably in faxes and dreads. So still, it was an 82% efficiency as far as an ambush, which is pretty good. Could have been worse. Oh, maybe it wasn't. I think the dreads, I think it pretty much lost everything, didn't he?
There might have been the opportunity to, well, potentially free up some of the super capitals that were tackled, but there were approximately 10, 15 Hicks on grid, and he couldn't get the sub-capital fleet there to fight it, unfortunately. I believe Vily mentioned on the Trash Talk stream that, well, they analysed the fight and they believe it could have been handled differently.
Yeah, so it looks like the supers all went down, but he dropped his own dread bomb to take out the dread bomb of Snuff and friends. Okay, does Snuff have friends? Says Dunk Dinkle, ironically, because Snuff is known for, well, let's just say they backstabbed 3 or 4 times in the last 5 years in big ways. Okay, so that was Sado's folly, let's call it. What else has been going on there in this war update? Something you pointed out earlier I wanted to get to was the what was that? These friendship citadels. Or friendship fortizars. Did we talk about those yet? They're ironically named, and what they are, according to Test, is they were fortizars put into legacy space. I don't know if we have all these systems where they were at. Let's have a look at Z-Killboard, see if we can find them. But they were basically goon swarm fortizars in legacy space. And they were ironically called the friendship citadels. I think, correct me if I'm wrong, anyone from Imperium, that those things were called, those things were known as, content citadels, one way to put it, says Joystick. But they were supposed to be places where the Imperium could reinforce a legacy coalition. In other words, they could go there with a clone jump or something, take their ships and help defend Legacy's interests. But what they actually were, according to Legacy, was ways that the Imperium could exact pressure on Legacy. So they were kind of like drifter watchtowers in some way. They're kind of watching everything that's going on.
I think maybe, they were leveraged for that particular thing, but they were never intended for that particular use in any way, shape, or form. Like, they were placed there so that Imperium forces could, get in and through Legacy territory in order to help reinforce, Legacy if they're being pushed from, say, for example, the east. Or from
a lot of ways
kind of
you can
thing.
think of it, like,
But
as
like,
embassies.
Yeah. Embassies are like how it is in real life, right? Like, you have embassies in order for, in order to foster faster sort of communication and faster negotiation between nations, right? But invariably they end up being a like a center for potential espionage kind of operations going on inside other countries, right? Like, they're not intended to be there for that particular thing, but eventually alternative uses end up being created because of that.
Most notably, there was the Pittsburgh incident where he staged dreadnoughts out of one, and that resulted in his removal.
Exactly.
And some were used for jump freighting, to not have to visit Iridia going to Delph.
Yeah, that too.
So these friendship Fortizars were, I think that, as you said, they were supply lines for allies to come in and to help you. They were also used as staging grounds by Goonswarm to have some fun at the expense of Legacy. That caused a diplomatic problem because the FC that did that was Pittsburgh, the one that we just saw lose a Ragnarok up north. He's now part of NC. But at the time, he was part of Goonswarm, doing a lot of work for them. But he wanted to have some fun, so he took Dread Bomb out there. That went wrong. They lost it to Legacy. Legacy kind of cleaned that up pretty quick. And Legacy didn't really complain about it at the time, or at least they say they didn't. Or they didn't make any demands that Imperium fire this FC that was doing that sort of thing. But pressure was exerted, for whatever reason, directly from the Mittani to Pittsburgh, according to Pittsburgh. And he basically was chased out of Imperium. And this made Pittsburgh very angry. We came on the show and we talked about it, and he was just livid, saying he would never go back to Imperium until Mittani was gone, or the leadership would change, or the whole thing had changed, because they were stifling the ability of players to have some fun for the game that they were paying for, in order for leadership to be able to stay in leadership and their treaties to be able to stay. So those are the two conflicts: diplomacy versus FCing.
And so you have to wonder to yourself, like, for people wanting content and, utilizing sort of blue tools for content, it's one of the reasons, or at least one of the stated main reasons, that Test are ending the non-invasion pact, is kind of because of these infractions, right? So it kind of makes you kind of wonder whether whether Pittsburgh was right or whether Pittsburgh was wrong.
You're saying there's a case to be made that he was wrong, and that the diplomatics were to prevent a war like this.
Maybe
that's going to happen. Yeah, got your point. Dunk Dinkle.
Then again, you also,
situation.
But you always have to. You also have to understand that, like, people want to play EVE Online for fun, and if removing all of the potential avenues for fun means, creating a war or not having blue trolls, then that might be the optimal case. It's just, there's various different ways of looking at this situation, right? Like, you could look at it in a situation of, Pittsburgh did something, and it was one on a list of infractions on both sides, for the NIP to end. But you could also see it as, like, the NIP was basically stifling a lot of potential good times to be had by various different players. And now that it's coming to an end, we are kind of seeing a pickup of people playing the game, people kind of getting more invested and involved in the game, kind of thing. So, is it bad? Is it good? Like, it depends entirely on your perspective.
What system was that in, by the way?
Oof.
It was ECJ or something.
Specifics kind of like elude me at the moment.
Yeah, same with me. I had it written down somewhere, but I've all these windows open. I can't find it. But anyway, what happened there was, so regardless of what their purpose was, they were extracted because a war is beginning. So you can see the Imperium pulling back into Fountain from forward operating campaigns going on in the north of Pureblind and Fade. Let's actually show you a map.
System would be PEK TAC 8Z.
Tenerifis, thank you. So we need to talk about it. We can go there. Here's a map. So the Imperium pulled back into Fountain, which is over here on the left. They were operating up here in we'll call the shallow north. And they did that to consolidate. They're also moving back from Catchstain. Well, Tenerifis is way out there. Oh, you know what? These were also These were also the Fortizars that the Imperium used to help fight against Fraternity. So they were pretty far over there. And then, so these Fortizars need to come down and be extracted or lost. And that's what the Goon Swarm was doing, but they ended up, I think there were 5 of them. They recovered 2. 2 others were destroyed. I think Brave was involved in that. Let us know if that was true, Dunk. Well, they were on kill mails anyway. And 1 was taken and stolen by, I believe, a wormhole corporation called... Oh, I forgot the name.
Foxholers.
Fox. Was it Foxed? Outfoxed. I think they were called Outfoxed. So that was a Margolis. It's one of those Galente ones, really tall, nice ones. So yeah, that's what happened there, and it was a diplomatic incident?
Theft of the Fortizar or the death of the 2 Fortizars in the
the fact that Brave was involved in trying to snag those or destroying them, or
I don't think there's much room for it, because the actual people who killed it, including the signer that lit the Dreadnought in, were both belonging to simple farmers who are well known for terrorizing that constellation.
Right. So it was not a diplomatic incident, and here's why. And Matani said so as well to his private people. In some place he wrote, this is not a diplomatic incident. If Tess wanted, they could have sat all day long on those things, something along those lines. And basically could have, they were okay to do that because it was not in the NIP that unanchored citadels were protected. Okay, Brave didn't attack, according to Dunkdinkle, Brave didn't attack any structures. We did attack neutral ships in our space. Oh. Okay, I see how they supported there then. And Test didn't even get involved. They didn't even shoot ships. They actually stayed completely out of it, although they were aware of it and watching it, just to keep, I think, ambiguity at bay. But apparently it was perfectly fine by the non-invasion pact, as Jean tells us here, right?
Yeah, I don't think the NIP stated that you couldn't shoot each other's ships in your space.
Right, but what about the Fortizars? Is there any non-invasion pact stuff there?
Not that I know of. Yeah, you don't shoot each other's structures, of course, because
But if they're unanchored, are they structured? If they're unanchored,
because it's an invasion pact, not an aggression pact. So
right, yeah.
I think we question it because we parallel to real life when we scratch our heads, and I think that's why people kind of question it. If let's say the United States has an embassy in the UK and relations degrade, and the UK says, "US, please remove your embassy." Okay, they tear down the embassy, they put in trucks to load on the plane. The trucks go into the plane, get attacked. Was that good or not? I mean, technically, they didn't attack the embassy because it was on its way to leave.
Yeah, it was parts of an embassy.
In real life, we would kind of scratch our heads and go, "That's not right." But this is a video game. Technically, it's not in the NIP. So I think when we think about things in the game, which is a real life type of simulator, we simulate war, we simulate diplomacy. I think that's what makes people stop and scratch their head, because something sounds not so right about it. But I think at this point, everyone's already agreed that, hey, the war is going to happen anyways. We're still headed toward that July 5th date, and this is not going to stop the war or change that.
Yeah. So Karamanza here says the forts were Vily's idea. Do Imperium teach UALX in... I don't know what that says. Sorry, it's moving around. But basically, in case there was an attack on on Legacy space, then the Imperium could actually come and help. I think that was generally what they were used for. But they'd been there a long time. Well, anyway, the point is, these things are extracted. There's a bit of a mess extracting them. Goonswarm don't get a lot of them out. They get 2 out of 5 out. And we're wondering, was this an international incident? And it was not, from the perspective of the Imperium, a breach of the NIP. So that remains intact. And really, that's what matters, right? It depends on what Imperium thought was going on there. If they said this is a breach, then they could have said, okay, it's our turn. We're going to do something now. So we could have seen a really quick escalation. But instead, it looks like everything will remain the way it is until this weekend, where there's going to be a lot of State of the Alliances from, I think you're going to see one from Test, and you may see a couple more from other groups. I don't know who. Fraternity already had theirs. And then you're going to see something we haven't seen before, and that is a public state of the super coalition, I guess, that is amassing to attack the Imperium. So that's going to be worth watching. We'll probably pick it up live, since it's going to happen right after Talking in Stations on Sunday.
With all of these coalitions and alliances going to war, I am curious to see just which corporations within these alliances are going to pull their own weight, and which ones are, well, too busy and focused on acquiring their own wealth or selfish gain. I am curious to see how many of these alliances will run once the war goes onto their doorstep, and which corporations will stay and fight to the bitter end.
Well, I can pretty much assure you this is going to happen. A lot of people are going to participate. To me, this is end game, right? This is a huge battle. Not battle, but maybe series of battles. Definitely an apex battle, like a BTAC-R is headed our way. It's going to be mayhem. I love the way Fraternity put it. This is a Three Kingdoms situation, where after this collision of armies, it's going to reshape the power structure that has been in place. So something is going to be upset. Either we lose Horde, sorry, not Horde. We lose Test as a third party because they get completely wiped out, territory taken, they're broken, disbanded. And then you have two polar caps again between the Imperium Horde and the Imperium and Horde, let's say. Or I don't know, it could be a third situation, but probably the other one is the Imperium goes down pretty hard and the mistake that was made last time was to allow them to take up residence somewhere else. So you may see them chased this time if they lose, chased into extinction. I think there's a lot of different variables coming into play here, but the scenario is that somebody's going to be gone after this, and that's going to change the map.
We speak of international incidents and also a conflict of interest. We also have a small a small international incident, who knows how big it will be, with Mangoes refusing to blue Fraternity for this war. And we both know that a senior member of Mangoes currently is the executor and owner of Ranger Regiment, which is in Imperium.
Miss Rabbit, right?
Miss Rabbit, Miss Bunny Lou, yes. She is currently the CEO and leader of Ranger Regiment. She purchased it sometime last year. And she's also, at the same time, a senior member and director of Mangoes, if to my knowledge.
Well, she's a corporation leader inside of Army of Mangoes. She is a benefactor to Ranger Regiment. That means that she buys them equipment, or she has invested in them. She doesn't own them, but they have declared that she is their queen, and there's a little bit of friendliness between those two. And they're on two different sides of this war. Army of Mango is allied with Legacy. Ranger Regiment used to be up in the north, allied with Dead Coalition, but they moved down south and are now allied with Imperium. So I asked her, what side are you going to be on in this war? And she said, I will do what the alliances do. And I said, which alliance? She said, she's essentially going to stick with AOM and stick with Ranger Regiment. And I think she's going to keep her interests out. So she's going to maintain friendships with both. And we'll see how that works out. Now here's a different problem, and this could be a problem for Legacy. Army of Mango is not friendly with Fraternity. They blame Fraternity for inviting them in or to join Fraternity and PanFam at the same time Naros was plotting their destruction. So it looks like a betrayal to them. And so they said, forget it, Fraternity, we're not going to join you. We're going to work with Vily instead. And they have been bitter rivals ever since. So Fraternity puts out information through State of the Alliance that they are going to go full bore into this war on the side of Legacy, their old enemy. And that means that they're going to be bluing Army of Mango. But Army of Mango is not going to blue Fraternity. So it's going to be a very interesting dynamic there.
I mean, I did mention it. You know, they're not exactly the best of friends in any way, shape, or form. And I was like, I had my reservations as to whether they were actually going to, be a part of the war in some way, shape, or form. I mean, to be fair, where they are, then they're not exactly in a situation where they need to essentially, push a lot of people into fleets. Otherwise, in case their territory is up next.
To say that they're not exactly friends, I would say that's an understatement of the century. Their rivalry goes back to their very own home server in Serenity.
Exactly. Well, I was understating it, yeah, but
Well, but the leader of Fraternity never played on Serenity. He's always been a Tranquility player. So it does go back to PIBC and Serenity and the Chinese server and some of the rivalries that go back there, but not as much as I think people think. But it will be interesting because I see that as a diplomatic. That's a diplomatic wrinkle that is not getting ironed out. It's going to go into the war this way, and that may complicate things. Not sure how that'll work. Also, Pando, who's in the audience here, talks about how not sure why people even bother trying to figure out who's on what side. It's everyone versus the Imperium. I don't think that's exactly true because Stain is already on the Imperium side, although Stain Wagoon, they call it, right, is not really that powerful.
I think the point that he's trying to get is, I think the point that he's trying to get to is essentially, with the first kind of war on the North, World War B, Casino War, whatever you want to call it, it was initially, just sort of, the larger groups going against, going against Goons going against Imperium, right? Up to a certain point, and then it became, there's a degree of velocity in this particular attack. Like, let's all jump in. And so everybody, a whole bunch more people like jumped in on it. And so what Pando is trying to say is like, yeah, this may start out to be, a PanFam kind of a PanFam / test sort of, two-front war that happens. But eventually, depending on the velocity of, who's winning, who's losing, everybody who's not Imperium may just, jump in. So you might as well, ready your troops up, ready everybody's expectations for it to be an everyone versus Imperium war, because that will potentially be the eventuality. It's that hope for the best but plan for the worst. So planning for the worst is everyone versus Imperium. Hoping for the best is that it doesn't get to that point.
The key point that you're missing out of that, though, is that in World War B, a huge number of the small groups that ended up kind of coming over there and diving in did so because they got a shit ton of money for doing it.
Yeah, that is true.
Why
they also a lot of them also.
Why would I waste my time going down to Delve to get into like a bunch of blobby fights with caps and all this other garbage when I'm getting perfectly good fights in Veil, or Tribute, or Pureblind, or Venal, or like anywhere in low sec? Why would I waste my time going down there when now I have other content, and on top of that, my content's getting ruined far less by large blocks interfering in fights or getting bat-phoned because the large blocks are busy.
Well, on my side of the small
Let them
group,
all kind of go sit down there and punch each other, and I'll go have fun elsewhere.
well, on my side of
So
the small group,
that
Mercenary,
small group pile, like
one at a time. Hold on, let me sort you out. We got your point, Murray. Let's go to Rich and then McLeod.
Mercenary, a lot of groups have, smaller groups, particularly the wormhole groups, have gotten mercenary contracts from both sides, both Imperium and Legacy. And the contracts came to us first, I'd like to clarify, we didn't go to them. And for us to abstain from these contracts would reward us only with poverty and a lack of gain, while other groups would certainly take our place, and they would revel in the wealth that they would receive from taking these contracts. And as for whether or not it's all against Imperium, well, I'm not sure how many of Imperium's allies are going to stay committed to the war. Somebody asked if Ranger Regiment and Dracaris will stay with Imperium. There's also the initiatives, vassals, initiative mercenaries and associates. I'm unsure how many of those are going to participate because Goon Swarm's, Imperium's PvP participating players is quite small compared to that of Horde and their allies and Test and their allies. So certainly they can mobilize more people to do PvP. They can conscript people and they can bring people who are long been inactive. But it all matters how many people you get in fleet, not the amount of assets you have.
So the thing that I wanted to put a bit of a point on is, in the first in World War B, people were paid for their time and for their commitment, kind of thing, and they were paid in raw ISK because that was what the casinos that were funding it, what Iron Bank and what Lenny Kravitz had in in spades, right? This time around, it might not be the case. The people who are overseeing this, the grand plan or whatever it could be, may not have raw ISK in order to pay people, but there's you can pay people in much different ways, or in many different ways, than just with raw ISK. It depends entirely on what you have.
Well, if anybody's getting
what people want,
if anybody's going to get paid to do a thing, it seems like the money could come from the Imperium, who has a ton of wealth, apparently. So,
well, I mean,
couldn't
the
they
thing is,
turn
like,
mercenaries? Couldn't they turn mercenaries over to their side? Couldn't they convince them through money to change sides, or something
We're
like
the
that?
disposable of the highest bidder, and somebody says that I'm fooling myself. Well, one doesn't have to, Murray, I would also like to mention this to you, one doesn't have to go to these big fights to participate in the war. The war you can participate in the war in the smaller fights or to,
In a gate camp.
of course, other issues. You don't have to go into the big tie-dye wars if you don't want to, and I'm not sure how
That's
many
not
of
even
the
your forte,
mercenary
is
groups
it?
want to do that.
Yeah, it's not even your forte.
is-
It seems like you guys would catch stragglers, try to catch people on gates, that kind of stuff. Yeah.
Is Entropic Thunder
It's
actually
asymmetric.
going to deploy out of their wormhole and into NPC Delve?
I'm not at liberty to discuss the operations of who gets hired and who paid what. I know that the contracts are both lucrative and available for both sides, but I can't quite discuss
But
what the constituents are.
The interesting thing is,
so that's not a no.
Well, it's not a yes either. The interesting thing here, though, is there room for smaller groups to participate in this big war? And we're saying,
of course, there is.
Yeah.
There's always options for asymmetrical warfare. Whatever happens, like nobody's completely invulnerable up until a certain time zone, and then they're vulnerable. Like you always have options for asymmetrical warfare.
Panda,
That's the great thing about Eve.
It doesn't require a lot of effective mercenaries to do a job, because if you look at the top PvP participating corps by time zone and by region, you'll find that among those, most of them in the top 10 are actually smaller groups. Some of the smallest groups in EVE, with less than 200 people in their corporations, make up the actual top 3 and top 5 corporations for PvP and, well, various time zones and such. So it's not a matter of... so even though the number of mercenary groups that are available for hire are small, their effectiveness is multiplied.
Yeah. So it'll be interesting to see. I'm just saying, if there's money to be involved, if that's a motivating factor, like it was, let's say, in World War B 2016, somebody has to settle what we call that thing, because I feel bad every time I say World War B. I feel weird when I say Casino War, whatever you guys want to call it. I don't want to name wars. I just want to know what to call them in retrospect. This war hasn't happened, doesn't have a name yet. That's how I feel about it. Okay, so the 2016 invasion, known as World War B to most people, there was money involved, but everybody that took the money says the money was just the beginning. It's what got us to say, we'll sit at the table and listen to the pitch, and it'll give us 2 weeks where we know we're going to get paid anyway because we're not going to be tending our moons, so we won't get our fortunes. If you can cover that, we'll come to the table and fight the first few weeks and see how it goes. But once the momentum got going, the money didn't seem to matter. Now, this is from the perspective of the people who were the money badgers who were attacking the Imperium in the north. Here, I'm wondering if the equation is not flipped. Is the money now on the side of the Imperium? Can they use that money to help defend themselves by buying off mercenaries, that kind of thing?
Well, and that was my original point, was, like, you're not going to see this overwhelming wave of all the small groups joining this, like, anti-Imperium blob, because, A, you need to incentivize them to go, and the idea that somehow, like, Legacy and Pantem are just going to vastly outspend the Imperium on that front, and the Imperium's going to do nothing about it, seems very weird to me.
Well, here's a stat that people didn't really pay attention to. The biggest fight that ever happened in EVE Online had about 6,000, I want to say 600 people in one system. It had about 4,000 members on split between two, waiting in different staging systems to jump in. There was a potential of 10,000 players in one fight, but the servers couldn't handle it. So only 6,000 ever made it in. So they did break the 10,000 number for people wanting to fight. Thank you, 6,142. That's the world record. Not 600, 6,142. Thank you, Sparrow. And when that happened, I was online with 12,500 people watching. We were covering it live. We were the only ones that survived because our cameras didn't die out. I looked to see how many people weren't at that fight, because you could see there was 33,000 people online, and only a potential 10,000 of those were engaging in this fight. So that's 1/3 the server coming together in the biggest fight, numbers-wise, that EVE has ever seen. So there's a lot of people that sit out these wars. Okay.
Like I said, it's an opportunity to do what you want to do with a much smaller chance of the bigger groups getting in the way.
So we'll see. Now, I think there's an interesting role to be played by our new arrivals in the last few years, and that is Korean alliances, but also Chinese alliances. This is going to be real interesting with the Chinese diplomatic things that are going on, and what kind of time zone pressure they can put on the Imperium if they're attacking. Because we have Fraternity, which I think is one of the biggest, if not the biggest, Chinese alliance. You also have Army of Mango, and they may not like each other, but I believe they're both going to be attacking the Imperium. And then you have smaller groups like VVV in the north, or I don't know if MSN is still even registering. But on the Imperium side, you have Ranger Regiment, which is considerable. That was one of the biggest groups in Dead Coalition. And I think you also have Dracarys, but, you know, let's be real. Ranger Regiment is the biggest Chinese group inside the Imperium. What's interesting here, I was talking to Vily about this, so it's not an unbiased perspective, but it was an interesting point because we were going back and forth about things. This was all in public. This is a group of us, went on for about an hour, and we were questioning him on things and stuff, and he was answering questions. That's what happens if you hang out at Talking in Stations. You get to hear a lot of this stuff behind the scenes. But up there, when Dead Coalition was being destroyed, basically, you know how the Imperium does say we're the best friend, the worst enemy, and they live up to that, and they've tried to live up to it. They tell you they're going to do that, and a lot of their actions back that up. But this was one area where it was kind of interesting. Their ally, I suppose, Sword Dragon, he was going down. Vily said the real gut punch to Sword Dragon, and the reason he really couldn't continue, is because Ranger Regiment defected to the Imperium. Essentially poached, or made a deal, or an offer, or there was an agreement. I don't know who approached who, but they took Ranger Regiment, which is one of the pillars of Dead Coalition. Is that something that you would do to a friend? And I do believe the initiative, Pando, you can correct me if I'm wrong, covered their move op to go south. So there was some aid there from the Imperium. Anybody have any comments on that?
Trying to remember that fleet. I don't think I was part of it.
Yeah, Tess did take. Let me answer this question from Polly Mui. Tess did take Siberian Squad. That was another group and another powerhouse from Sword Dragon, but they were enemies. And I think, I'm drawing a blank. I think there were groups that went to Fraternity as well, but they were enemies. So if you're taking alliances from your enemy, you're making your enemy weaker, and that all is very consistent. But if you're taking alliances from your friend, you're collapsing your friend, and you're not supposed to do that if you have some kind of treaty with them. Maybe there was no technical treaty, and that's why it was okay for Dracarys and Ranger Regiment to go to the Imperium.
It was to my recollection that part of the reason why Siberian Squad went to a Legacy was also because Hanzo wrote on one of his speeches that he was disappointed with the performance of Ranger Regiment, and he was disappointed of having to stand almost alone in some of these fights. I'd say out of the GOTG war, Siberian Squads was probably one of the, was the alliance to punch up the most. So I'm curious to see their performance in this upcoming war, where maybe they'll be fighting against Ranger Regiment, their old allies.
Yeah, well, we'll see. And it's going to cut in different ways. But again, going back to the point I was trying to make, I just want to see if anybody has any pushback on that or a different point of view, because I think that's an interesting diplomatic twist that I actually hadn't considered before. If not, I invite you to write an article so I can read it on what the perspective on the opposite side is. Why did Ranger Regiment go to the Imperium, and was that a slap to Sword Dragon? I think Sword Dragon, did he end up, I know he's inactive or whatever because he went away, but he ended up joining Imperium. Is that right?
Yeah, he ended up, he merged into the Initiative.
To Initiative. And was he okay with Ranger Regiment merging into the Imperium, or was that done against his will?
I couldn't say to that. Like, I haven't heard how he feels about that in, either for or against. So,
he may have.
I can't tell you that, but you'd have to get in touch with him about that.
I mean, a good counter would be that Sword Dragon himself was the one that arranged that, and that would completely negate Vily's point that that's not a good thing to do. So who knows? Like,
it's possible. It is entirely possible. Like we were like it is true that we were assisting. Like we had gone up north to assist, Darkness and their allies, in certain times of need. Not specifically because they were friends, but they were the enemy of our enemy. right? So
Mhm.
you know, in that situation, you know who you'd prefer to be fighting, and so you know there's always going to be benefactors to that particular situation. So you know, in most of those situations, that was, you know, darkness and darkness's allies, you know. So whether that's whether that made Imperium a much more you know, agreeable sort of group of organizations to Sword Dragon into Darkness and their allies, and whether something came from that with regards to Ranger Regiment, I don't know. It's possible, I guess, but I guess also, you know, having Darkness or a lot of Darkness basically merge into the initiative does kind of speak kind of potentially towards that, for sure.
Yeah, the reason we bring this up, because it's Kira Mansur is saying, is this guessing in stations? To a degree, it is, because we don't know what deal was made there. We should probably find out and just put a rest to it. But I do want to say this is Vily's perspective on the Imperium, and it could be spin, or he made a fair point. I thought it was an interesting point. That's why I'm bringing it up. But since we don't know the definitive answer, Sword Dragon could have arranged the whole thing himself. We should just leave it there. The last thing we'll talk about was this war pre-planned? Because I think Vily is dancing around this. He said two different things. One is, we just want out of the non-invasion pact, and we should be able to do that without getting threatened of annihilation. On the face of it, that seems to be true. Vily is saying, look, we just don't want to have an invasion pact. Doesn't mean we're going to invade you, but we don't want to have that. Is it okay to get out of this agreement? We'll even give you 2 weeks. We won't just violate it. And the Imperium says, hell no, we know what you've been up to, and we're going to kill you, we're going to wipe you out. That's essentially what's happening. But if you dig deeper, and it doesn't take much to dig deeper, because Pro God Legend is out there, and Vily will admit that this was planned a long time ago. So the question is, you're not just getting out of a non-invasion pact. You're planning to attack the Imperium, and you've been planning it a long time. Then it gets murky. What does that actually mean? And when you ask Vily, or you ask Pro God, there has always been this at the end of the road. It was always going to come to this. It could never not come to this. Because Imperium is self-standing, one of the largest powers in the game. And I think Vily understood that at some point they would need to be reckoned with. So it was planned for a long time, but it was more, we'll do other things until that day comes. Not necessarily we're plotting against the Imperium from the very beginning. So it's an interesting little dance he's doing there. Any thoughts on that?
Oof.
Oh, by the way, we don't really allow people to disparage other people in the chat. So, I mean, you can say some things, but, you know, when you start really going after people, we're just going to delete it and then eventually ban you. So don't waste your stuff on that. Well, anyway, it was very interesting because that is, why is that important? Why does it matter? This is a cataclysmic war. Who cares about the diplomatics? Because all diplomatics are based on trust. Trust is based on past behavior, and your past behavior adds up. So people who've broken promises, let's say like snuff, people are very reluctant to do business with snuff. Well, snuff people do business with snuff because snuff can deliver damage, but they don't necessarily like or trust working with snuff.
It also speaks to, you know, the meaningfulness of a war. Like, because if Wars in Eve were basically just CCP kind of going, everybody's blue, and in March, you know, this group is not going to be blue to that group, and you can fight. Like, then, you know, that would be like the wars. Yeah, people may fight, but like the wars wouldn't really have any meaning, and people would not really have, the degree of incentiveness to fight, or the degree to sort of, to commit really, to the level that that we've seen, previous wars in Eve to occur, right? But when it's a meaningful fight, because it's all past grievances and sort of player behavior, and like sort of like a large scale sort of leadership behavior, like for and against various different people and all that kind of thing, like it provides this kind of almost visceral sort of desire to sort of go above and beyond when it comes to when it comes to wars, right? And that makes a war much more much more meaningful, but like more so than that, like gives it a degree of legitimacy, right? Or is that just me?
One can never get complacent, and well, to be constantly shadowed by somebody else and to fall victim to their ambitions and their decisions at their whims, it's a slow death. It sounds like a slow death. How much are you willing to let them take from you until you have nothing left?
That
All
is
right.
the question.
Where'd your apartment go?
It burnt down.
Jeez. So clean.
I will say I've made some observations, and that is Ranger Regiment might punch up a little bit more this war, because 2 months ago they actually pinched, I'd say, around 400 people from Stars of the Northern Moon, which is why Stars of the Northern Moon have gone a bit quiet. And these 400 people were in corporations that were actually somewhat combat focused within Stars of the Northern Moon. And that was a significant number. That was, I'd say, at least 1/3 of their entire alliance, and a good portion of their PvPers. One of the major corps in question would be Eve Jadwig of 52, which used to be in Stars of the Northern Moon, and now they're in Ranger Regiment. That's 300 people and a good number of combat pilots.
That's a good point. We'll have to see how they show up this time. They're already pretty strong. We'll see if they're even stronger. Now, what was the deal with... I thought this was pretty funny. I forget who brought this up. It might have been... Oh, yeah. Oh, Killah Bee's in here. How's it going?
Hey.
Let me get this little thing out of the way. I heard there was a Goonswarm guy that was away from the game that lost 32 billion because Goonswarm destroyed all their own structures and pillaged them and moved that money into the SRP. So they said everything is a donation to the SRP. If you lost stuff in an abandoned citadel, thank you for your donation. And this guy lost like 32 billion and stuff.
Oh, that sucks.
Yeah. Was that true? That was somebody from Imperium told me that. I don't know if it's I think it was true. Well, how are you doing?
If it was Imperium, it's probably going to be false.
No, I believe the report was. I believe the report was there was an abandoned structure, and Imperium were actively looking at people who were destroying their structures, and they just immediately warp a massive fleet onto them. Well, if the structure gets destroyed, they'll finish it. They'll clear them off and take all the loot. And if they flee, then they'll destroy the structure themselves and take the loot for themselves. And in fact, I can link one of the major ships that the person lost, and if I look through Ezekiel history, he was part of Goonswarm Federation. And I'll put it in the...
Well, is he mad about it, or is he...
Well, if he returns, he'll find that his Paladin is gone, and his Terra, with well over 25 billion worth of assets, is also gone.
How do you know this?
Terra with 25 billion worth of assets? Jesus.
So cheap, right?
How do you know this? That's my question.
You literally talked about it on the show 3 weeks ago.
Small gang intel network. Other
did we?
excuses?
Vily's in here too.
The Terror was on Z-Kill.
My memory isn't that good. Okay, we have Vily, we have Killah Bee. What's going on, guys? Who's gonna be talking on Sunday?
And how's the coordination going?
Well, Sunday there's going to be a super coalition meeting, right? Like we've heard that in a couple different people that there will be
Sunday 1900 on Twitch. We have a State of the Coalition for Legacy that's going to be streamed. Yeah, I imagine I'll talk for at least a little bit. I'm sure ProGod will have a fair bit to talk about. It should be a good show. Hopefully everybody will be interested. Obviously no hot wings will be involved that I'm tracking.
Why not though?
It just doesn't make for a good show watching ProGod cry.
Fair enough.
Actually, you know what? I'm wrong. That does make it for a good show. So
he has a penchant for eating on stream, so yeah, you'll need that.
And cooking.
Oh, I didn't know that. So Sunday 1900, there'll be a big announcement. It'll be streamed live. That's new. Haven't seen that before.
It's a Legacy Coalition meeting. Something to keep in mind. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's not a like half of the universe meeting or some kind.
So we'll see like 4 admirals.
We have an alliance meeting as well with NC Dot on Sunday, but it's an NC Dot alliance meeting. It's not going to be streamed on Twitch, and it's also not happening at 1900. So
just so happens to be on the same day.
Yeah, exactly. Completely coincidental, as they would say, right?
Oh, you know, there's a reason why the word coincidence was brought into being, right?
No, yeah, exactly.
Things just happen that way sometimes. Very likely they're planning to attack us from the rear, and we're not going to see it coming. But
where are they going to attack? Well, hold on. Non-invasion pact ends Sunday. At what time?
Yes.
Correct. Like honestly, we haven't like actually discussed the time because it's like very quiet in those diplomatic channels now. But basically, I assume like downtime on Monday, everybody will be hard at each other. That's my guess.
Somebody was asking me something, and I was like, "Well, they're probably not talking to each other, so diplomacy is a little harder now." And they said, "No, there's always talk, right? There's always is there talk between Test and the Imperium
for the last 5 days or 7 days or whatever."
There has been.
Has not been.
Has not been. So you guys are at a complete silence.
Pretty much.
All your talking seems to be in public.
It's usually how it goes.
Yeah.
Killah Bee, what's NC going to say on Sunday?
Vince. Oh, shit, dude. That's a good question. I mean, Vince... The thing about Vince is he doesn't really write these things down. You know, he usually comes in 20 minutes late. Then he goes like, "Oh well, I'm gonna keep this short." But his microphone quality over all the years has always been shit, or bad. Sorry.
Yeah.
And he for some reason like he's he has a good job. He's a very well respected man in the real world. He could easily afford a real headset. Somehow he refuses to buy one. So. Yeah, I mean, honestly, for real, just wait for Sunday. I'm not going to say what's going to be said now. It's pointless. Everybody with half a brain knows what's going to happen. So let's just wait and
how big is this? How big is this? Let's call it this. I don't even know if it's a coalition, but how big is the opposition to the Imperium? And is it a coalition or is it just...
Well, there are coalitions, there are blocks, and then there's, super blocks. I don't know what to call it. Like, when Killah Bee did World War B1, you were effectively in a situation where you had either you either had a block, a super block, or like some kind of like super coalition. I don't know what term is the most fitting, right?
Yeah, because often these like super coalitions, or what you want to call them, consist of, because Legacy is a coalition already, right? And then you have PanFam, we're a coalition. Now, if 2 coalitions start working together, they don't necessarily become one coalition, because we're still
like
two
Fire
entities.
is a coalition as well, right?
True,
like,
Fire as well, yeah.
So generally, like Legacy is referred to more as a block because that also usually encompasses Fire and AOM, who are both not part of Legacy, but our allies, and
Confusing.
Yeah. So it's very awkward the way it. There's no clear naming convention that perfectly works. And much like PanFam is a coalition, there's allies in them that are like, for example, Winter is also a coalition, but is not directly part of the PanFam coalition. So then that's when you have kind of a block over there, which is a grouping of coalitions usually.
To answer your question a little bit, Matterl, so one thing that happened in World War B was kind of funny, or that was something that amazed me, was that when it became really apparent to everybody in New Eden that this thing was going down, that the CFC, as they were called back then, we're finally gonna get a beat down to some degree. A lot of people came out of the woodworks and offered to help out of their own, because it's just something. Some people have a genuine dislike for them, but some people also just like piling on, because piling on is usually pretty easy, and then you can claim, I was part of it, So there's always going to be that. So I feel like people are going to watch this for a while, see how it goes, and then usually when one side is starting to pull ahead, there's like an additional pile on, because those people are like, oh, I want to be part of the winning team. So I think that's going to happen, and then. Like I said, there's also just groups lingering, even in HiSec. There's like people, I don't know why, maybe because of Burn, Jita or something. There's like people in HiSec that dislike goons, right? So when World War B happened, it was like I had random HiSec corps, sometimes even individuals, just message me in game with a mail and go like, hey, I'm a solo miner in this HiSec system. I can't really provide anything to the war effort. I can't come to the front and fight with you guys. I'm just a lone miner. But here, have 3 million stront. It's what I've been mining for the last 3 years. I don't really need it. Maybe you can do something with it. So here's my strontium, right?
Wow.
And I just random people from HiSec contract me the weirdest stuff, and be like, hopefully this helps in the war efforts. And that's like their contribution. That also usually happens. I think
it's like war bonds.
Yeah, it's funny, right? Because I didn't expect it. I actually was going through my in-game mail the other day when I was talking about this to some corp mates, and I was just looking at all the mails from all the HiSec people. There was literally like more than 3. It was like 5 or 6 or 7 different groups that messaged me, completely never heard of them, and be like, yo, hopefully this helps. We contracted you some strong, some minerals, some liquid ozone, whatever, and they just wanted to contribute that way. That's usually what happens around these kind of events as well.
This is where all those little ganks or ice mining interventions that Goonswarm might have done 6 years ago might come back to actually bite them. Like, this is the little moments.
Some people really hold a grudge for very long. I still have some people that hate me because I ganked their dreadnought like 8 years ago when I was in Black Legion or something. That does exist. Some people hold a grudge forever for that kind of stuff, and those people usually then approach you or want to help out or something.
Oh, so that's interesting. So little people are reaching out. Here's the thing. It came up here. Somebody wanted me to ask Vily when you expect PLNC to backstab you. I think it's kind of a loaded question, but there is some truth to it in this. You did fight World War B together. We'll call it that for now. You did win it together because the Imperium had to retreat and leave their territory. And NC Dot, of course, Killah Bee wasn't with NC at the time. He was with PL. But they attacked Test and drove them out of the north. Isn't there a lingering memory or resentment of that?
Yeah, absolutely. But I mean, it's important to understand that there's no illusions here. Tess knows that when the enemy is dead, PL and NC are going to be the next target, and PL and NC know that when we have finished the job and defeated the Imperium, Test is going to be the next target, right? Like, there's no confusion here. I mean, post World War B1, we were both very small entities, and things didn't go right, and we were pretty upset with the way some of the diplomatic stuff happened. But it is what it is, right? Like,
so you're eventually going to be enemies with NC and PL and those guys too.
That's what I said the other day on the show as well, right? Like,
yeah,
there's
like
only
this
so
isn't a
many entities
backstab.
in
Like,
the
this
game.
is
Yeah.
like this isn't a back. Like that's why I hate this usage of the word backstabbing. It's like we're not backstabbing the Imperium. We gave them 2 weeks so they could make sure they turned around, so it's not going in their back, right? Like, and much the same.
This isn't a backstab. Like you don't give someone 2 weeks notice to of a backstab. Like backstabs happen like that. Like
well, okay, but let me push back on that.
There's no reason.
Let me push back on that, McLeod. Vily, this isn't a backstab in the sense that you're doing it as a surprise attack, but you yourself, and especially Pro God Legend, has said this has been planned for a long time. Can you address that?
Well, the thing is, we plan everything. Like, every eventuality is planned, and the assumption that we were gonna attack Imperium at some point has always been an accepted reality that we planned for. Like, I'll give you a simple real-world analogy. The Americans have plans to attack Canada, and Canada has plans to attack the Americans.
Not true.
Like, it is true. You can actually look it up on Wikipedia.
Probably
right?
True. Probably true.
I mean, immediately after World War II, there was Operation Unthinkable, and obviously who would have thought that after such a bloody war, somebody had the plan to let's go attack the Soviet Union at the height of their war preparations.
Well, like, and don't get me wrong, like Canada and the states are good friends still, right? But the reality is that there's only so many entities in EVE, and to say that we would have no plans for any situation is incorrect. We have to plan everything. The statement has been made multiple times that we planned this. This is like, well, yeah, we planned this, but on what time frame are you looking for? Like up until I actually looked up on Zkill yesterday. I jumped my Komodo into a dread fight, like late May at some point. And I remember that fight pretty because I was like the first time I really felt like scared to jump a ship in for a while, and I'm like, it's like I don't know if this is not good risk reward. This is not a good call, but you got to lead the guy. So I jumped in, and I was like super anxious about it. And I remember because I was fully committed at that point to still pushing PanFam out of the fucking drone regions. So like in the last month. We've done some planning. Like 2 weeks before we told Imperium, we probably did some planning, 100%. But
what about this whole thing about it being planned for a long time?
Well, I just said it has been planned for a long time, but not in the sense of like, how like when you say planning, it's like how will they react to us telling them? Oh, they're probably going to want to go like Test is next and hell dunk and kill Test. Like
so by planning, you mean you've wargamed it or you've thought of it, you've made for the eventuality.
We've accepted it. We've accepted it's a possible eventuality and a very likely eventuality, and we've taken steps to ensure that eventuality, if it comes to fruition, will be as mitigated as possible. But like, it's not something where we're like, we're like I feel really sorry for our FC team. We moved our entire capital cache, which is literally like almost 1,000 capitals, to the eastern side of the map, like 3 months ago, and now we're moving it to the western side of the map. And I can tell you right now, if I was planning this shit then, I would not have moved my fucking capital cache to the other side of the fucking map. Because our pilots and our FCs are like having a rough time moving all of these fucking capitals. Like it's not fucking fun. And if my intent had been to attack the Imperium, I would not have done that. I can 100% assure you.
Yeah. So Crep Tank says the Mittani called them out, so they move up their plans. How would you respond to that?
Well, I mean, the Mittani's paranoid nature of like, wow, I know you're coming to attack me, which is, multiple accusations were levied like this in March. Like, after a point, you're like, okay, bud, whatever. Like, but the plans they seem to like have based their whole strategy on were not actual plans. Like, Test was never going to go to Cloud Ring and invade from Cloud Ring, which is what they've like been like. We caught them. We sussed out their plan. It's like, this is the worst tactical plan imaginable. Why would Test ever fucking try to invade the Imperium from fucking Cloud Ring? It's like they've got it in their head that like they can't be like that their strategic minds are the only ones that are playing the game, and like, well, this is what we think they would do, so that is what they were doing.
Well,
and
I figure if they had information that you were going to attack, they might have done the first attack, the first preemptive strike to show you they had initiative. Like one, because he's made a big deal out of telling everybody publicly, we caught you trying to do something. We know what you're up to. This isn't a disintegration of a non-invasion
but
pact.
that's the same shit he pulled when CO2 switched sides in World War B, where he said, "Oh, this was all a big trap to catch us supers and titans." And
Oh yeah, I forgot about that.
100%. Like, I mean, again, he's gonna say, "I'm full of shit." He's probably gonna link the TIS in his next fireside and see, "Oh, look what they're saying." But there was never ever a word about catching their supers and titans in MTech-O during World War B. Yes, CO2 flipping sides was planned about 48 hours in advance or something, and it was basically the extent of the conversation was, because I put a lot of pressure on Gigex, on the judge, who was their main diplomat at the time. I told him that I was gonna kill the iHub anyways, no matter what they did, because I had to be sure that we take that system. And they said, okay, no matter what how the fight goes, we're gonna flip sides anyways, right? So basically, they told me, okay, if we manage to defend the iHub, we're gonna make a post after the iHub's safe. If you guys manage to kill the iHub, then we're gonna make the post after the iHub is dead. And they did that, right? And that was literally all that we talked about. And then, you know, Mitani was like, "Oh, we know you guys plan to catch us supers here, and you were going to flip the mid-con." That's, you know, that's just what he does.
Well, but
as Vily said,
well, having assets in a location or having assets in range of a location, whether they're specifically there to do one role or whether they're to do a primary role, but being available to do a secondary role that might be more, shall we say, more significant in a war. Like that is a tactical scenario that is both realistic and capable for you guys to do. So you can say, oh, our supers weren't there, in particular locations for this job because we were going to be doing
formed
that
our
job.
supers and titans. We formed the entire blob of the MBC. We were outnumbering them in supers and titans by quite a bit at that point because we had the MBC fully established. We formed up our entire super and titan fleet like an hour or 2 hours before the timer. Nobody in their right mind, if they wanted to trap the enemy super fleet, would do that because it was off the table that you guys were going to commit supers when you saw our numbers because we outnumbered you by a bunch, right? So it's never going to happen. And that's why the whole statement just doesn't make any sense, but it's fine because that's the way he plays and that's what he does, and it works for his people because that's just the way he spins his narrative, and it's the same thing he's doing now. It works because the way he says it, the way he phrases it, it makes it seem like they're Black Hand and they're, they have this whole mastermind thing going, and that's fine. At the end of the day, who cares?
Yeah,
you don't need Black Hand or masterminds to know, strategic positioning of stuff, and you don't need to be able to, force you don't need a fleet to be engaged to be able to catch them. Like, look what happened to XIX's, super fleet when it was caught sort of east of the map, right? Like, it got eviscerated, a large chunk of it got eviscerated, not because they were specifically engaging somebody, for, in a tactically advantageous situation. They were moving and they got caught. And they doubled down on it. Like they were moving, they got caught, they doubled down. Like, there was a situation that situation could easily have happened in the north, and you knew that the supers and titans were online and being moved. So like you can say that, like, Goon's Black Hand kind of thing, isn't all seeing, all knowing, and that's completely fine. Like, it isn't all seeing and all knowing, but you can still look at the tactical situation and go, there's a possibility that they could jump on a situation to capitalize on a situation.
Well, it's just, but that's the problem though. Just because there's a possibility of something happening doesn't mean that was planned to happen. Like, but there's no distinction between those two, right? That's the problem. It's like much like this, the Kamal incident with Test and Initiative. It's like Initiative keeps claiming it was some big trap by Test to like kill Initiative Superfleet. Our Superfleet was an 08 TAC. It's literally like 8 mids away, but it's like, well, they could have moved them, and it like, if we were gonna do this thing, like, we would have taken the most basic of like steps to do it. But it's like, because they get it in their head that this is the plan, this is what they were going to do to us, this is how they were planning to betray us, we sussed it out, we saw their plan. Like, they get it in their head that they're so much, more advanced than their enemy and then it's like nothing can change that narrative.
Well, I don't know enough of the Kamal incident to be able to respond to that, Billy. So, like, you're literally speaking. You're literally soapboxing at this particular moment because there's nobody here who can actually be able to, kick back at that particular
the bottom
point.
line that the public saw, though, Vily, was that the Mittani was able to make an announcement of a war that was going to happen before you did. How did he know that?
How did he know that there was a war? Well, actually, here's an interesting question, and I don't actually know.
But then I want you to answer that question.
No. So here's the interesting question: if he wouldn't have made that announcement and played things as he did, would we even be in this situation? And I don't know if the answer is if actually we would be.
What do you mean by that?
So let's say they continue fighting in the east for a while, right? So they keep doing what they're doing, or the west, sorry. They keep fighting up in Cloud Ring. They're not on anchoring. They're keep stars. They're having fun. Are we in a situation where this war even happens? I don't know. Sometimes things become self-fulfilling prophecies. So if you say Tess is going to attack us, and you retreat, and you start looking at us with a fucking carved knife, how many options do we have?
So what you're saying then is before he came out and said, Tess is going to attack us, they're our enemy, this is over, that you weren't completely sure you were going to attack the Imperium?
100%.
100%. Okay, so you weren't decided.
So you're saying that, because someone is, a bit paranoid that they're out to get you, that gives you reason to be going out to get them.
I'm saying it gives us reason, but it can be a deciding factor among many reasons, if that makes sense.
Okay, so that's an interesting kind of thing. All right.
Well, that's a big deal.
Because listen, I've had conversations from March where it's like, I see your plan. I know you're planning to attack us. Da 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 da. And it's like, okay, but, and it's like, after a while, you can see that kind of mental, like, the clamp where it's like they're not going to let this go. They're convinced this thing is happening, and it's like, okay, well, how is this going to play out? So if they're convinced we're going to attack them, sooner or later, they're going to attack us, right? Or they'll find ways to attack us, that'll be just as good as attacking us, right? And there's all kinds of ways in which, you have to plan for that, basically.
Well, if I was a nullsec leader and this is the situation that we were in and I was in the position of Mittani, I would put down on the table evidence and then I would attack preemptively to catch you off guard. Would that have worked or were you already ready?
I don't know. We weren't ready.
So that would have worked?
Yeah, of course. If they showed up with all of their super caps in Esoteria in March or April, we would have been fucked. As I said, we moved our entire capital cache east. Like, we had extremely limited resources on the the Goon side border.
Yeah, look, and here's a Thrill says Goons don't break NIPs. I'm sorry, but if you know somebody's going to attack you, you do a preemptive strike, you prove it. I think that gets you off the hook.
But Vily's not preemptive striking. Like, you don't give. You don't
give. No. I'm saying if I was the Imperium
of notice.
If I was the Imperium,
yeah, I know, but I know this is a what if kind of situation. But like, this is the facts on the ground. Like, you don't give like a potential hostile 2 weeks preemptive notice that you're going to be, that you're going to be basically breaking a nip. Like, if you're going to do a preemptive strike, like that's the like the word preemptive is the key word in that particular phrase, right? Like, it's not a preemptive strike if the guys know about it 2 weeks beforehand.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't understand your point. Sorry. But what I was saying was that if I was sure that Vily was going to attack me, nip or no nip, if I was sure that was going to happen, I would put my evidence down at the same time that I was marching my troops into his capital. It just seems like that would be a dramatic.
That's not what they thought. Like, I don't know if you watched, but Pando had maybe it was on one of his FC chats with Asher, I think, where he talked about what they thought we were doing. Apparently at the FC level, I don't know what Mittens was saying, but at the FC level, they thought we were going to work with PanFam to invade through Cloud Ring. That was their assumption. And they were planning ways to attack test, because they thought we were going to skirt around the NIP, so they thought they were planning ways that they were going to skirt around the NIP. I've got conversations that are more severe than that one, obviously. But obviously, like to me, like what they said there is pretty. It's accurate, or it seems like a true representation of what they probably thought.
But Vily, you like backing away from this, this particular scenario and situation that we have ourselves in at the moment, right? Like, I know that might be a little bit difficult to sort of pull your mind back from there, but like in general, NIPs, right? They are awkward things to deal with because
Yeah,
I know because I know for certain that looking at the fallout of the NIP that Deadco had with PanFam, like that wasn't exactly the greatest of relationships in any way, shape, or form. So, if that, the history of EVE Online's, non-invasion packs are littered with, situations of, one group basically trying to get advantage over the other.
Well, it's important to understand there was some real significant breakdowns of diplomacy and strained relations because of that war, the Sort War. When Initiative came to kind of blow up our structures in the north, and then the Imperium assisted them, and then we waterboarded the Imperium on one of their ops to come destroy our structures, and then they got so mad about that they decided to destroy everything we owned in the north. And that kind of situation definitely played a major factor in how we reacted to all of this.
All right, so I'm going to jump back to my question that I wanted to ask you, and I think this was a question I actually kind of forgot. But when did you decide you were going to attack the Imperium? Was it a long time ago, or was it less than 2
I'll
weeks
have
ago?
to look up the date. It'll be sometime early June is my rough guess, give or take a week here.
But I don't discount that like large groups create contingency plans for most eventualities. Like that's just basically doing your due diligence as an alliance, as a large alliance leader, or as a the leader or the working military team of an alliance. Like you just you do formulate potential eventualities of all sorts of different scenarios.
It's counterintelligence.
You don't act on them, and that's what Vily's
counterintelligence
saying. Like
101. The side that correctly anticipates the other makes the first move always wins. And as well as that, even if you know something, how well do you know it? There's plausible deniability, Matterall. Like, I know something might happen, but can I prove it? Could I be wrong? There's plausible deniability.
Well, that's what we're trying to do here.
It's a complicated thing.
We're trying to okay, so there's a lot of narratives out there, right? People are saying stuff without information that is true or not true. We don't know because there's no way to verify it. So people are just saying stuff, and people are just working themselves into frenzies. You can see it in our chat. And so what I'm trying to do is say, like, if there's any information to be put out there that clears some narratives up, let's put it out there, because there's mixed signals. There's dancing.
I'll be honest, Matterall, here. Like, some of the I'm not going to release private chat logs that I've had with Mitani or any other alliance leader. So a lot of those conversations are like, listen, if they want to vilify me and say I'm the bad guy here, I'm the backstabber, there was no possible cause or reason for any of this, and it's all been planned since the Bob barbecue that we were going to spend years doing this. That's fine. I can be the villain here for people if that's what they need. And if goons want to assume that I have some true hatred for them, so be it. Like, in the end, this is a video game, and if I need to be the villain for them, that's fine. Like, it's not gonna break my heart to play that role.
Doesn't it hurt your feelings a little? You were a Goonswarm FC, and you were a big one. Fountain War, huge. Like, or right before Fountain War. Doesn't that hurt your feelings? These are your guys. These are some of your old guys.
Yeah, but it's been a long time. I've got more than a decade now being called every bad thing in the book from I learned on the harsh streets of Kugu forums, like, it's a there's a certain hard shell you develop here. It doesn't work. It doesn't matter in the end. Like, we're gonna do this war. Everybody knows it. They can call me, this traitor. And if their narrative wants to say that, then so be it. I can't do the things to break their conditioning or the narrative that's being spun to them. So, like, so be it.
All right. So it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter to you what their narratives say. But what we want to know at Talking in Stations is not, we want to filter those out to get to truth. Like, we want to block spin as much as possible and try to get to like some of the interesting things that are happening here. That's why we're asking these questions about it, because there's some things that don't add up on both sides. And one is, and you just answered it. When did you actually intend to, I don't know, go on the offensive against the Imperium? And you said sometime in June. Early
June, late May. As I said, there's a battle in May where I'm literally like rolling the dice with all the assets. So I'm not doing that if there's a chance, that 2 weeks late, or if I had any intention at that time to attack the Imperium, I wouldn't have been taking those actions, right? Like, it just doesn't flow like that. Mm-hmm. So I know at that point, for 100% certain, I wasn't planning any of this in the way that people want to, accuse me of planning. So that's when I know it was sometime 1 to 3 weeks after that, but I don't know when it was exactly. 1 to 3 weeks after a certain battle. What was that battle? What really ticked you off? What made you say, okay, take the planning off the shelf. Let's look at it and see if we can attack the Imperium. What moment, what event happened that made you decide that? I was going to look at, I'm not totally sure which one it was that, put me over the fence here. I'm trying to find the battle. All right. You look for that. I'm going to talk to Killah Bee here. Are you just loving this? Is he
Wait, what? What am I loving?
Are you just loving that Matani is like ratcheting up the rhetoric to make it impossible to come to a diplomatic switcheroo or something?
It depends. Sometimes I find it hard to listen to him. Sometimes I find it very entertaining. So for example, last week's Fireside I thought was really cool because he was really in he was riling up the troops. He was going all in on his on the way he does that, and it was really entertaining to listen to. But then the meta show, for example, I didn't listen to because I knew it was gonna just be a bit too much for me. So I'm not a big fan of spinning and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, of course I'm having a good time. At the end of the day, this is kind of the level I want to play EVE on. Some people consider stuff a war, and it's very entertaining for them and have a good time. But most of the stuff we did with NC in the last year, I didn't really draw me into the game, which is why I played so little. Mm-hmm. And this is looking like it could be something that I'm really going to enjoy again, which is why I've returned and why I'm starting to do stuff again, why I'm starting to get involved again and talk to people and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, I am loving it because this is what I play for, which is why when suddenly some dev block about a 5v5 trick arena appears, it doesn't really bother me that much because it's just there's so much more exciting things happening right now in EVE to me personally, that I couldn't really, I don't really care that much. And then that's just the way, that's why, yes.
Really couldn't be worse timing for that feature to come out, could it?
Well, I don't think, actually, no, I don't agree, because I think the people that feature caters to aren't, they're still going to enjoy it, and it's still very good for them. It's a great feature, I think. And people sometimes between ops in a war, there's actually some breaks as well. Sure, sometimes you can just take one of those filaments, take a little 5v5 battle, and then an hour later you go on your 2000v2000 battle and enjoy that.
Oh. So there might be a great time for that feature to come out, fill in the gaps.
Yeah, fill the gaps, that kind of stuff. You never know.
Yeah, with all the large fleets, the large kind of fights going on, the people who want small gang stuff, people who want like those 1-on-1s, those 2-on-2s, 3-on-3s, that kind of thing, like might be seeing a reduction in the amount of people that are available just in regular space to do that kind of stuff. So yeah, like this kind of feature might be this time for implementation might be a good idea. Might be perfect.
Well, this reminds me of when the World War B was happening. A lot of the SMA guys were actually gambling on I Want ISK, and the irony there
Yeah,
is
a lot of goons as well. Like it was so hilarious because when I was a banker, because after World War B or during World War B, basically I became a banker at I Want ISK as well.
Oh, that's right.
And I handled those payouts, and you realize that like 50% of the people that you pay money out to are goons or Imperium related people, and you're just like, that's funny.
It's ironic.
They basically funded their own demise. Well, not demise, but diminishment.
Well, destruction or eviction, yeah. But but that is pretty funny. So anyway, but this is what you like. This is the gameplay you live for, and it seems to me the rhetoric is such that it reminds me of when Triumvirate went after Phoenix Coalition. They basically said they're going to die or we're going to die, but somebody's going to die because we're going all in.
In a way, I kind of envy those people because I don't have it in me. Like if I could never give a speech in front of a fleet of mine or something. Well, some people would probably tell you that I give speeches all the time, but that's just because I talk a lot. But I couldn't actually write down a speech or something, like, because I would unironically just cringe too hard. I'm very susceptible to cringe, and when I would try to give a speech like the Metani sometimes does, it would just be too hard for me. I couldn't pull it off. I would probably start laughing, or just I don't know. I couldn't do it. So in that sense, sometimes when I like listen to him doing that kind of stuff that he does on the meta show or on Fireside, when he looks straight into the camera on the meta show and he like does this like hate speech or whatever, it's just I could never pull that off, right? I just can't. So that's why I find it so fun and entertaining to watch. It's great how much energy some people are putting into this game, and what they do to get their people riled up and get their people ready for war. And clearly it's working.
Well, you mean like intense speech,
intense.
not hate speech. Hate speech is a different thing, but
intense speech.
I'm sure Matani's against hate speech as it's known in the U.S. But it kind of reminds me of a professional wrestler. You know how he almost like puts his hands together and is kind of casual flexing. Let me tell you something. This is what we're gonna do. I'm gonna get in there and rip his head off in the ring. I'm just gonna destroy him.
Yeah, I can do that. If I was a wrestler, I would be the most boring wrestler to watch ever, because I would just walk in there and be like, "Yeah, we're just gonna, we're gonna wrestle it out. Let's see who's better." And I can't go in there and be like, "Yeah, we're gonna smash their heads in."
We're gonna dance around the ring a little bit, and then he'll grab me and throw me on the ground.
For example, on like Trash Talk Tuesday, we try to like play up the trash talk or whatever. But every time I try to like get involved at that level of like trolliness, like it just comes out trolly. It's like, ha ha ha, goons, where's the money? Like it's like nobody takes it seriously like quite the same way. It's definitely a talent he's got.
Well, I think he, from my experience with him, he taps something real, and I think there's something real going on there. I don't think he's secretly smiling in the background. I think he feels these feelings and he's projecting. But that's my interpretation of him, because I know Matani, right? And it's really good for his group. He's managed to keep a crew of people together for whatever reason, maybe in spite of that kind of performance, or maybe because of it. And that management group has managed to be innovative and keep a lot of people together. I think we calculated like 3,000, 4,000 people kind of active in the Imperium, right? Something like that. We're looking on zKillboard to see how many PvPs how many kills in the last month people participated in. And you can see basically the size of an active alliance in that way. And we came, Vily, you were looking at that. What were those numbers? Do you remember?
Numbers for what, sorry?
Active PvPers in the last month for...
I think Goonstorm was like 30,060. Yeah, it was we were talking about the other night, like just the active 7-day delta of like active PvP members.
You guys were a little smaller than that.
Oh
Horde
yeah,
was,
we're a good bit smaller.
and Horde was about a little bit smaller than that too, right?
Yeah. So if I recall, Zkill's not loading very quickly for me here today. If I recall from last night when we were talking about it, Imperium or Goon Swarm, which is the vast majority of Imperium, is like 3,080. Test was like 1,400, and Horde was like 2,300.
Yeah.
Yeah, so 3,090 is their 7-day delta.
Walk me through that so I can show the audience how you figured that out.
You just go to Zkill.
Mhm.
And then on the side, there's these top corporations, characters, alliances, whatever. You just click on an alliance. So I'm going to click on Goon Swarm Federation. And then you scroll down a bit. Oh, Jesus, okay. Let's restart. Go to Zkill board main page.
Yep.
Scroll down until you're at the most recent kill page, most recent kills feed.
All right.
Okay, now scroll down a little bit more. And to the right on the side of the screen, you should see top corporations, top characters, top alliances, whatever.
Yep. Got it.
So on the right, you see those top alliances, top ships. You click an alliance, let's say Goon Swarm Federation.
Right.
And then once again, you scroll down to the recent activity feed. And right at the top there, you have active PvP last 7 days.
All I see
so
is
on the right side, where it says top characters, top alliance, top corporations, at the top of that, so it goes active last 90 days, active PvP last 7 days, top characters, top corporations.
That column was hidden. So that's a cautionary thing. If it's if your browser's too narrow, that column will be hidden.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay. If it's further down, so you just have to scroll further down.
Got it. Okay, so I'm there.
Okay, and active PvP last 7 days, kills plus losses, and then the characters 3,090 right now.
Oh, look at that! It's right here.
And then you can do that for like all the regions they're involved in, all the systems they're involved in, different types of ships, different corporations, etc. So you can see from that there are 3,090 characters within the last 7 days in Goon Swarm that were involved in a PvP kill. For me, this stat is kind of one of the most important baseline stats because it's a measure of activity that's very real. So from this number, you can usually gather things like active amount of people in the actual alliance. You can gather, how big their fleets are going to be. Like many different factors can be gathered from this stat. But generally, it's a good measure of the size of the alliance at the real level.
So good rule of thumb.
Yeah.
Now let's look at Horde, which is kind of big too.
So you go back, main, top alliances, Pandemic Horde. Then on the right, you look at the exact same number, and the characters active last 7 days is 2,330.
Right. So it starts to add up, though. You put Horde together with Fraternity. Let's look at Fraternity.
Keyboard top alliances, Fraternity, active last 7 days, 1,630.
Yeah. And then Test.
Then Test, active
you guys are in
last
the top
7
10.
days. I think we're 14. Yeah, 1,400.
So you start to get an idea that any one of these groups can't really compete with 3,000 if we just take these numbers. But they start to add up. 2,000 from Horde, 1,500 from Test, 1,600 from Fraternity. Let's look at the smaller ones like NC. This is probably going to embarrass you, Killah Bee. You might want to look away.
Well, the problem is, while it's a good stat of overall activity, it doesn't actually work in all cases. So when you look at alliances like NC Dot or PL or Snuff, what it'll show you is like 200-300 people, right?
Yeah, 300.
But, okay, so yeah. but we know those groups can form almost full fleets on their own. So the older a group is, the less active their general pilot is usually. So if you have, the really old groups, a lot of their pilots only log in for things they're interested in. So their general, let's roll around and do PvP throughout the game is diminished quite a lot, right? Because I don't think anyone here thinks NC Dot is, 1/10 the size of Goon Swarm in terms of overall military strength, right? They may be in terms of actual numerical strength, but in terms of military strength, I don't think anyone would make that assumption. Maybe 40%, but definitely not 10%.
Yeah, because this scale puts Volta at 250 and NC Dot at 311. That doesn't make sense. But it's because NC a lot of their guys just sit out until something big happens.
Right. So there's a certain amount of like ping warrior culture that's prevalent among many alliances where their guys only show up if there's something that they're interesting and they want to do. And at the same time, you also have the situation where when they do PvP, they usually only do it with specific characters. And for example, I know in NC Dot, for example, the vast majority of their capital, super capital, so on fleets is going to have basically zero activity in the last, month or two. So there's no real activity there to judge on.
So this does break down a little bit, but it's generally it's a good way of looking.
Yep.
Cool. Thanks for showing us that. Yeah, NC is not dead, by the way, and you'll see that demonstrated soon, I believe. Same with Pandemic Legion.
I really hope so.
Me too.
Or maybe you won't see. Maybe you will see it demonstrated they are dead.
I don't know. I've seen what NC and PL can put together when it matters at times, and sometimes that's the only real important number. We'll see.
Yeah. And I guess we'll find out Sunday if this really matters to them when they have their State of the Alliance.
Yeah. In terms of interesting breaking news, Initiative just killed a couple Rorquals and looks like at least one or two defensive fleets of like Retributions and Jackdaws. And Snuff killed a Goon Fortizar and Animalia.
Wow.
And I wasn't on any of those kills because I'm here talking.
Because you're working.
Just standard whaling stuff. Looks like they're losing a few, but nothing crazy. Obviously the 3 Sib Squad Rorquals are not ideal, but standard stuff.
So, quick analysis, like, where are we now? This is still the calm before the storm. Are pieces still being moved around? We did see, who was it? It might have been Pittsburgh in a Ragnarok get killed as he was moving it, I believe.
It's Pittside. What it was.
Unfortunately, the low sec, well, fortunately or unfortunately, the people who live in those low sec pipe areas are pretty effective at what they do, whether it's the eastern, derelict pipe, or the western pipes, or Black Rise is actually probably one of the better ones in terms of safety, but certainly there's no shortage of groups that hunt the low sec pipes and are very effective at it. So if you make a mistake, they will kill you. And I don't know what mistake Pitts made, but he must have made one.
It was Sinoing at 1400.
Oh, you're super quiet.
Yeah, that would be definitely among one of them, yeah.
Sinoing in at 1400?
Well, if you're going to move through somebody's space, generally you don't move through their space in the middle of their prime time. The Iridia low-sec hunters are all Russian-based, is my understanding, or primarily Russian-based. So if you move through their space at 1400, that's like the time in which they are the most active and most aware, I guess.
And Pittsburgh is USTZ. Like, that's not even a good, like, that's a terrible time for him to do something.
Well, it was a morning for him, right? And, he probably just was like, oh, it's the early morning. Surely nobody's playing. It's like, bro, time zones. It's all
it's
fun.
A 24-hour game.
He's been grinned at it a little bit internally, and that's fair enough. Everybody loses a Titan every now and then.
So, role for smaller groups. We know all the big groups are forming to do a thing. If you're a smaller alliance, are you gonna like gate camp and pick people off, or are you gonna just stay out of it?
Yeah, there's going to be a ton of roles for small groups to attack the Imperium. There's going to be no shortage of ways in which they can get involved.
Can they attack you too?
I mean, they can in theory, but I don't see why they would want to.
Is anyone being paid?
We're supporting the little guy. This is what the battle is. It's the little guys coming together to fight the big bad.
Oh. But that's
I would advise those small groups to reach out. You know, some of the small groups may think, "Oh, there's no way if I mail somebody that I'm going to get a response," but you would be surprised.
But I think you're counting on the sympathy that all small groups don't like the Imperium because they're big and stable.
Well, I mean, it's as much as I'm laughing because I'm like trolling a little bit. It's also true to a degree. Like the Imperium, like prides itself on calling everybody that's not them like pubbies and useless and all the rest, right? You know, that's the choice they make in terms of how they operate, which often has the consequence that nobody outside the people in your own little social sphere likes you. And don't get me wrong, there's plenty of people that don't like Test or Tappy or whatever you want to call us too. But usually, you know, in this kind of battle, everybody can see who the underdog is here, and you know, everybody likes to get a little bit of punch or a little dagger swipe on the side to their heels of the big guy that's always pushed everybody around. So that's usually why you see the smaller groups come in on the side of, you know, whatever group is going to be experienced.
Is that what happened in Killah Bee in the last invasion, 2016?
Yeah. It was difficult to manage. Like we had an NBC Discord, and I didn't want to invite all those random small groups into the Discord because it was just going to be too leaky. And you know, so it was messy. There was so many people approaching us like, yeah, we want to help. What can we do? Can we cut off supply lines? Can we do this? Can we do that? It's incredible. Assuming that's going to happen again. Again, usually it happens when one side, you know, when there's some when it looks like one side is winning. We were definitely being approached more with the Money Better Coalition after we made some big pushes like MTechO and stuff, because you know people are also afraid of getting some vengeance on them.
Yeah, once you have the ball rolling, right? Like it's
well, it's momentum.
Yeah, exactly.
It's once you have the momentum, people are more inclined to sort of jump on bandwagon.
People want to be on the winning side, and you know,
yeah,
Mittani threatening to put everybody who comes against him on his like kill list or whatever is, you know, just one more piece of that kind of puzzle. So if it looks like the Imperium's going to win, then people are much less likely to come in and that kind of thing.
That is one part of this is separate from motivations here, but it is one part of the I learned this in philosophy class. How you define a group is through rituals, right? So you say, this is our group. You're in our group. Therefore, you should be loyal to us. But when you do that, when you draw a distinction about who belongs and who doesn't belong, it leaves people out. You have to say that some people are left out. That's part of it. So in this case, when you refer to everybody else as pubbies, it's like the public, right? We're the aristocrats or the Roman.
That's not what pubbies
senators,
means.
isn't it?
Not what it means.
And
what's puppy mean? I thought it was publis or whatever.
No, it's a very derogatory term.
Oh,
I don't know if it's derogatory. Like it literally just means that people who play on public servers. Like it was derived from game. It was derived before even online. It was derived basically people who pay public in public public servers for games. Like just the general kind of
so
people
it's like
who aren't.
It's like the poors,
like big clans. No, not really.
Well, if you make yourself.
So are you saying, McLeod? Are you saying that Mittani uses puppy as a neutral statement? Is that what you're saying right now?
It depends. Like I don't think he means it in a massively negative statement, but he means it in the sense of people who aren't his group.
Not long ago, somebody asked him, "What is a puppy?" and he replied with, "Anyone outside of the Imperium." That was.
Well, if you don't like to respect anybody out of the Imperium as, I guess, an enemy, an equal, and somebody that you could potentially be given the wrong circumstances or the wrong choice of actions. Well,
is it derogatory or not? Is it just a neutral term?
It's not derogatory because technically, Ranger Regiment were Pubbies before they became part of the Imperium. Now they're part of the Imperium, they're not Pubbies. Like
that's like saying you're now an Aryan brother.
Unless it's not derogatory until you specifically determine that it's going to be derogatory to you.
Well, I'm going to be fighting for the most lucrative contract and what my corporation and I decide is going to be the best for us.
Have you determined that yet, or are you still? This is Volta. What are you guys going to do?
I'm not Volta, but
sorry.
Well, we've seen contracts come out on both sides, and we're evaluating our options, and we'll see how it goes. But as for Goonswarm's leaders and diplomats, they make themselves as exclusive as any rock star. So if it's difficult to approach them, it's certainly going to be difficult for them to approach us.
All right, so let's make it clear because I'm not clear, and this is for you, McLeod. Pubbies is bad term for everybody. It doesn't belong to us, or a neutral term.
I'm gonna explain something very simple to you in very simple terms, and it doesn't mean it refers to a lot of things with regards to being offended by something, right? Do people take offense or do people give offense? Like, how many times have you heard, "Oh, that guy has given offense to me"? Doesn't happen. People don't say it that way. That's not how it works. People get offended. People take offense to that. It is something that you just have to find to that.
I think
something that someone says.
I think when they talk about Pubbies, though, Matani or anybody talks about Pubbies from the Imperium, they're talking about like the unwashed masses. It seems to me it's very dismissive. Am I wrong about that?
But that depends. Like,
that's literally the meaning of the word.
You may be poor. You may not come from a high, high society, high class background. But whether you determine to yourself whether that is a negative is up to you. There are people out there who embrace and love the fact that they are from a low class background, like from I don't know what you would call the masses or whatever, right? And they use it as strength. They use it as like a way of basically being able to say, I'm not, I'm made of something stronger, right? It depends entirely on how you personally take it.
Oh, I found a definition. I mean,
because essentially what you're saying is if everything that everybody says is determined by basically if it's determined by someone giving offense rather than people taking offense personally, then comedy is dead. Because comedy relies on, basically, people taking offense, it basically being somewhat offensive to somebody else.
Okay,
you
so
have
here's
the Urban Dictionary.
Yeah, Urban Dictionary. Yeah, I got it.
Yeah, there you go. Go.
Do the second one. That's the better one.
The second one, but the first one got okay. Let's look.
But if you want to go the Urban Dictionary route and all that kind of stuff, then fair enough. But if you want to actually know what giving offense and taking offense is all about,
Nobody does,
and
dude.
all that kind of stuff.
Okay, just let me say. Don't get offended.
Nobody does it. Nobody does except for massive, like super fucking respected and really, really, really successful comedians.
Well, don't get offended before.
Nobody. Nobody.
Wait before I say something before you get offended. Hold on. This says
that's not to you. That's to that's to Killah.
All right, fine. Here we go. Members of a game community that aren't in your particular private group, usually seen as less desirable to play with. We don't have enough players. We could just let in some pubbies to join. Okay.
The second term is more fitting when you look at it with the Something Awful forums, which is, Goonswarm's base origin as well.
Going back to Urban Dictionary.
The fact that it's almost exclusively used in phrases like "you wouldn't know you're just a puppy" means it's an insult. That's just unarguable.
I don't see a second dictionary.
Dude. There's some high level definition that comedians use, which means it's not an insult. Bro.
Well, the second one is
I
like
call you a puppy.
A friend's
I'm not being nice.
I can't find it, so you'll have to link it to me, or somebody read it.
2. Pubby. Derogatory used to describe anyone playing a multiplayer game that isn't a member of the Something Awful forums. Typically, goons treat them like lower class garbage and expose them to as scumbag garbage in the process. While it can be great to grief the douchebag teens that play online games, goons have decided that an average Joe is worth being fucked with for laughs.
Okay, that kind of fits.
That was definitely written by a scholar. You can tell.
A scholar.
It was written May 23rd, 2010.
That kind of
great
fits
as a date. Well done on reading a date.
Wait, that kind of fits the way it's used, McLeod. Can you admit that or not? Maybe you can't, but
I'm not saying that that's sort of incorrect in some way, shape, or form from a point of view, for sure.
I like that. Tashinki says that was written by a puppy.
I mean, it does.
That's kind of what
it does seem to be written by somebody who was, somewhat vexed on that particular situation.
McLeod, you got to keep party line here better, or you're going to be backstabbing the team.
I'm not trying to go any particular party line, dude.
Yeah.
I'm just trolling a little. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I always try to laugh a little when I say these things, but
he's part of TIS. We try to keep it neutral. That's why we have a bunch of Imperium guys in TIS. A bunch. Anyway.
Matterall, I need more money so I can buy a bigger spade, apparently.
Buy a better apartment. Your apartment was awesome. Okay.
I think at the end of the day, it like in that sense I agree with McLeod, because it depends entirely how you use the word, if it's gonna be offensive to somebody or not, right? But when you listen to like all the firesides and all the meta shows, the way Mitani uses the word puppy, it's clearly not a neutral kind of term, right? So he does like to give the word puppy a prefix as well. Often it's something like stupid or shitty or idiots or something like that,
Well,
so
I'm thinking
it's very obvious which way he likes to use it.
Sometimes he's just meaning
he's riling up his group to sort of be,
but that goes
back fine with it.
Okay, that's
unified against something exterior like that.
But that goes back to our initial point.
meaning.
You can't complain that people outside your group don't like you when you cordon off your group and call everybody not inside your group fucking pubbies, right? Like that's what we were talking about. Why do people, go after the Imperium versus go after Test? And it's because Test is like, we're the stupid dino. Yeah, we fuck up some shit. Yeah, da. Or you can be the Imperium and you can be the, you're with us or you're against us. Everybody not with us is a fucking puppy. And then you can't be like, why do all the pubbies attack us? We were so nice to them. Like, it doesn't like quite flow, right?
Et tu, puppy?
Jesus.
Because I always thought that's what it was.
Bring some classics into there.
Because I always thought that's what it was, right? I think maybe I was deceived by Aerith, which isn't hard to do. That, it's public, it's the people, it's the public out there. We're the senators and aristocrats in here. We're the more valuable citizen. But out there is the public, and they're the unwashable masses, or unwashed masses.
There's still people in the UK, obviously sort of high society kind of people in the UK that still use the term pleb. It's weird.
Yeah, Xylix, your wife calls you hubby. I think that's a bit different, but I may be wrong. Okay. Anyway, enough of that. We wanted to make the point that rhetoric divides people. You can't be surprised if the miscellaneous people start to group up saying, hey, I don't like being called that, or you stepped on me one time when you were passing through, or whatever. Everybody has enemies in this game, especially PL, especially NC. So who knows where these groups line up. But I think Killah Bee was saying he imagines that people are going to attack the bigger dog in the fight. which is the
I
Imperium.
think they're going to attack whoever was losing.
Oh, okay.
I'm going to be real. At least most of the groups that that can actually do some damage, I think those are likely going to side with whoever's going to win, and that's to be determined.
So you better not start losing quick. If you
Yeah,
want to
dude. I just want to I want to have a good time.
Wouldn't that be something? And is this imaginable that you guys just get off to a terrible start and Imperium is eating your lunch and the miscellaneous smaller groups come in and they're like, writing's on the wall. Let's get a piece of NC. Let's get a piece of PL. Let's get a piece of test. Is that likely?
Possible.
Yeah. So that's the thing, right? Like in the past, if you look at wars in the past and EVE, usually it takes a while for either side. But most of the time, it's the attacker that has to get into the flow for a while. But me saying this is gonna be. I can already predict what's gonna be said. It's like, oh, they're already making excuses that they're not gonna make any progress in the first couple of weeks. Just listen to Killah Bee on TIS. So I'm just gonna tread carefully here and just say, I probably should have just left it at what Vily said.
Yeah,
it's plausible.
So, like, I'll give you a great example from the Fraternity War, where we basically made 0 progress the first 3 months of the war, right? So the war took 8 months. First 3 months of the war, we didn't take a single system, not one. And then we broke, we framed it as, we're just trying to chip through the wall. And bit by bit, as soon as we got that first brick, then we got the second, and then we got the third, and then we had 8 bricks, and then we had 12 bricks. And all of a sudden the wall was crumbling down. And it's just keeping your people motivated while you're trying to break down those first few bricks. And, certainly this war is going to be very different from that war, but it really could always go in a number of ways.
How do you see it going?
How do I see it going? I can't really answer that without giving away information that
some
isn't
strategy.
Yet, so.
Yeah, I just thought I'd trick you into giving away your battle plans.
I know. I've seen you try multiple times.
Don't mind me. I try to pry information out for the benefit of all. That said, like this is kind of I think it's kind of interesting. I'll just take an indulging moment here from a meta perspective of the media watching. Like TIS is coming under attack a little bit. It's okay. We've been here before and it's fine. Again, we're trying to like Imperium and all those guys are always welcome to show up. We don't just go and invite certain people to be on these daily shows. We just leave it open and anybody can come and anybody can talk. You will be moderated for appropriateness, but that's it. You can definitely, this is an open forum. Now the Imperium has their own show, either the meta show or their channel, or they have their own media with INN, which I'm very familiar with. And that's usually where they're going to get their points across if they want to. But really the real place that the messaging is born is the meetings with their group, with the fireside chats, and then with the meta show. Like that's all the messaging that happens, and all happens on Saturday. So that's where they prefer to get their information out, which is totally fine. I think they also, McLeod, am I wrong about this? Do they bar people from coming on to other shows, not just ours, but any other shows, or are they welcome to move around?
Who specific? What, like, which group?
Like Imperium, Fleet Commanders, any of that kind of stuff?
I don't think so. But I wouldn't.
I will say this.
I'm not.
That's not a no.
I was told by a specific FC that he was not allowed to come on the show Trash Talk Tuesday last night because it wouldn't fit the narrative that the Imperium wanted to push. And I'm not going to name his name, but because he's a good guy. But...
Is that the 12-year-old you beat up on?
No, we've asked multiple people, but only one person actually told us that they couldn't come and they were just not allowed to come. So
we used to have
that
FCs
does suck,
from
but I don't. Like
It's okay.
I don't have anything like I don't have anything or know anything to contrary to that. So like I couldn't say whether that is the case or not. But if that's what you've experienced, then that's what you've experienced. So
And to some degree, I think it's fine. Nobody owes it to talking in stations to represent themselves at all. If they want to, because
Yeah.
we have an audience of
I mean-
over 300 people right now, and this is daily occurrence, they can't. It's up to them. It's the tool is open for them. We just try to push out narratives. Is
yeah,
all.
I mean, I would like to think that Imperium would like to at least be, capable to be, on a talk show to provide their perspective, rather than just have the other perspectives have free roam on the talk space that people are consuming.
100%. And let me be clear. Like, if at any point Matterall thinks I'm explaining the show too much, I'll head out. Like, it's what TIS is in terms of Eve right now is we're it's the closest thing to a neutral news network. Like, he does what he does, and he's trying to put together a good show and keep it as unbiased as he can. And obviously, I understand I'm the right or left side of one of the political sides, and the other side is either not sending representatives or they're not
I
just
mean,
not there. So
I'm trying. I am trying.
yeah, exactly.
But it's the other thing is like I'm not going to talk about bullshit that I don't know or haven't experienced. So if you're making a point and I have and I want to respond but I have nothing to respond with, like either I'm going to say sorry, I don't have anything to respond with, or I'm just going to stay silent because I don't have anything. Like the worst thing in my in my sort of opinion is trying to do a rebuttal of something that you've said with information that I don't even know is credible or even right in any way, shape, or form, and then you just turn around and go, well, that's bullshit because of this, and this, and then I'm like, well, that just sunk me in completely. So
yeah, and I don't mean to do that, but sometimes I do have information that you don't know, Evan. I understand you can't always.
That's true.
And like, I don't mean to jack you, like right that, but it's just the kind of way it is.
That's
and
understandable.
So, here's an interesting point that I really want to answer from chat. So SRSLI, who's like an Imperium kind of guy, he said, "Who the fuck would we want to be in the Imperium show on an FC with 9 enemy FCs screeching at them, calling them shitbags or something?" I would love to join, an Imperium TV show right now, and if people will have me, I'll gladly do it. It's important to understand that the ability to be there and humanize your side is an incredibly powerful tool. And even if you're surrounded by people that are on the opposite side, it's a great opportunity. And there's definitely no way that, if you wanted more help or more backup to come join you on that show, that we would ever say no, right? I think people would love if we could get, Asher and Jay and K Color and a ton of different FCs from the Imperium to fully represent both sides.
I was on the meta show right after X47. That was fun.
I heard my name mentioned. Was not invited or not allowed to visit any of the Imperium related shows?
Probably not.
For what reason?
You're just a puppy, Rich.
You're a puppy, maybe. I don't know.
Oh no, not this again.
I'm not one of you, huh? Very well.
But I remember going on the meta show after we had a very tense or terse kind of diplomatic issues with the Imperium, and it was very much kind of an attempted grilling. And it's important to go there and at least represent your side, in my opinion. But yeah, I don't think we really need to go over this too much more. Matterall does what he can to put on an unbiased and good show, and I'm sure he's doing everything he can to try and represent both sides as much as he humanly can.
Well, I'm trying to find that clown face meme that was put up. It's kind of funny.
That one, yeah.
Yeah, it's a horde bucks in the sack and stuff like whatever. That was actually a really well done meme. It's pretty funny. I can't find it though. I've looked all over. Anyway, it must have sank. Okay, yeah, and we don't need to get into it. the focus should be on the players and what they do, and because they're the ones that are actually making things happen. We just fill in the gaps and make sure that their stories get out there as much as possible. But there's no media war. We're not at war with anybody. Imperium's welcome to come here, and that's just the way it is. So, is there anything else that you guys want to talk about before we finish up here?
Did you know that your tongue knows what it feels like licking anything, even if you've never licked it before? You can look at any objective on your table and imagine licking it, and you will know exactly what it would feel like to lick it, even if you've never licked it before. You could try it right now.
I could try it, right? I don't want to try that. Right
I'm wondering if Killah's just exploring how much he can get away with right now.
Well, now that gives me like a whole range of things to do as a new hobby. I'll just go around looking at textures.
Not at this day and age. Please, God.
All right.
Give it 6 months to a year.
Xylix found the image here, and it's sad clown. I think this is a historic painting of some sort. But what it says here, this is one thing I will answer. It says in this little, I can't zoom in, but on that newspaper, it says ratings in the can or in the trash can or something. Our ratings are pretty good. I don't know what you're talking about. The Meta Show will get a lot of live viewers, 500. That's about twice as much as what we get, if not more. And that's exciting. But all our fans are YouTube viewers, and we get like 2,500 on Vily's last visit, pretty much. So it's like we're doing fine with ratings. And it's not really about ratings. Actually, we don't really care that much about it. I know that sounds trite. But what we really like is the chat. We really like the people. We really like the fans that come here, whether they are for or against whoever. And when they add information, because that creates a cyclone of like richness from EVE Online in general, from everywhere. That's what we look for. Our whole goal is to get higher quality, not more people. But we also get more people because we have higher quality. And that's just a fact. I don't know if I ever give out statistics for what Talking in Station sees as far as analytics, but I will say when we had the blackout interview with CCP, who came to us and said, we want to use your show to communicate with fans. That's a big flattering thing. 18,000 impressions were made. Actually, it's more than that now. That's what it was a few weeks after it aired. 18,000 people watched the video or listened to the podcast or watched it live. And then when Rise came and announced the Sino changes, that was 15,000 impressions. So those are big numbers for active players who are interested in this sort of stuff. And so the numbers are there. Our ratings are not in the tank. We may not have a lot of live viewers, but we definitely have a lot of listeners and fans, which is great. And we're going to end on that happy note with the sad clown and thank Vily and Killah Bee for giving us so much interest, Pando for rating us and also adding to the chat. He is someone that we can get on the show every once in a while, and when he does, it's great. He's one of the best out there on shows, just like these two guys, Vily and Killah Bee. So we're thankful to have access to these guys. I really appreciate it. And thank everybody for hanging out with us today.
And I'll just say, if you like this content, if you like this show, don't be afraid to like, subscribe, donate, give the show a little bit of love. I know Matterall puts a ton of work in here, and he takes a lot of shit from both sides, trying to stay as neutral as he can. But he definitely needs your help, Don't be afraid to hit him up on Patreon or, just give him a sub every once in a while. It helps the show, and they're trying to put a good product out here for you.
Look how easy that you made that. That's awesome.
Thank you, Vily.
We talked about how hard it is to ask for support from our Patreons and stuff, but we do have Patreons, and thank them. And we also have people who subscribe and stuff. Thank all you guys for listening and for giving us upvotes and for subscribing and all that good stuff. That really is what keeps this content on the air. And so it gives us this platform that other people can use to give, to record history for EVE Online. Thanks, Vily. Thanks, Killah Bee. Thank you guys. Thanks, McLeod. We will see you tomorrow.